Pennsylvania Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman, the state's Democratic nominee for U.S. Senate, is calling on President Biden to decriminalize marijuana, saying, quote, "It's long past time that we finally decriminalize marijuana. The president needs to use his executive authority to begin descheduling. I would love to see him do this prior to his visit to Pittsburgh. This is just common sense, and Pennsylvanians overwhelmingly support decriminalizing it."
Amen. Senior political correspondent at The Hill, Hannah Trudeau, tweeted, "Interesting development from Fetterman. Can he be the Dem to get Biden to change his stance on legalizing marijuana? He plans on discussing this with the president in Pennsylvania. Many have pushed him on this. Policy is widely popular nationally, and he's seen his approval go up lately." Here to weigh in is host of Straight Shot, No Chaser podcast, Tezlyn Figaro. Tezlyn, welcome back to the show.
Always glad to be here. Thank you.
What are your thoughts on marijuana legalization?
Well, my thoughts are the same of how they've always been before they took these polls and will be until they lay my body down. This is not about polls. This is about a promise. I want to be very crystal clear about that. If you allow me a moment to read directly from the website of the Biden-Harris agenda for Black people, the plan, the Lift Every Voice plan, it says, quote, end, unquote, "He will end once and for all the federal crack and powder cocaine disparity, decriminalize the use of cannabis, and automatically expunge," let me say it again, "automatically expunge all prior cannabis use convictions and end all incarceration for drug use alone, and instead divert individuals to drug courts and treatment. He will continue to eliminate mandatory minimums and the death penalty." So this is not, again, about a poll. This is not about me helping out the Republicans. This is about holding President Biden accountable to his promise, not only to all of his voters, but in particularly Black voters who saved Joe Biden. It was Joe Biden that said, quote, end, unquote, "I owe Black voters." It was Black voters that saved Joe Biden in the primary. Without Black voters in South Carolina, he would not be president. So if nothing else, he should keep his promise. And secondly, he owes this because, let us all remember, and no worries, I'm here to remind you, it was Joe Biden that wrote the 94 crime bill that locked up Black men disproportionately. There are more Black men in prison now than those who were enslaved in 1850, and a great deal amount of those came from marijuana. And I want to be clear, according to the ACLU, let's throw some facts out there. 52% of all drug arrests come from marijuana. And I also want to say this for the social media comment caucus that I know can't wait to comment on this. No, not all Black people care about marijuana. Not all Black people smoke marijuana. I do not. But it is important that we understand that this has been something that has disproportionately affected Black people. And he was a part of making sure that happened to our community. So I want to continue to push this line for him, for his Black voters. And also, again, not all Black people smoke weed. Let's be clear about that. We have many issues that we're concerned about, but this is something he should do, Bree.
And just plenty of white people do smoke weed. I'll leave it at that.
Well, look, I think that's an important point, Tezlyn, because I mean, this is part of the argument that's been made by a lot of criminal justice advocates that, you know, all the studies show that Black people and white people use marijuana at the same rates, but when you have increased policing of Black neighborhoods for all kinds of structural reasons that we can talk about at another day, you just get more arrests. So, you know, a lot of conservatives, a lot of, you know, people across the spectrum are concerned about Fourth Amendment rights, search and seizure, people being patted down and rounded up in the street like Gestapo. The effects of having the police routinely invade your life, raid your homes, pat you down, search your car, is that if everyone's doing something at the same rate, that the people who are being searched more simply get caught more and locked up at higher rates. And to your point, Robbie, that you make on the show a lot, the public is paying for the mass incarceration of these people for non-violent offenses that everybody is doing. In fact, a recent Gallup poll is showing that while Americans are nearly evenly split over whether marijuana has a positive effect on society at large, with 49% saying yes and 50% saying no, Americans view marijuana more favorably than alcohol. 53% of Americans say marijuana use has a positive effect on people, while just 45% said it has a negative effect. In the same July poll, 75% said alcohol negatively affects society, and 71% said it has a negative effect on those who consume it.
Well, and they're clearly right, because alcohol obviously has more, and I drink, I'm not in favor of criminalizing alcohol by any stretch of the imagination, but alcohol clearly has a more negative impact on our society than marijuana. Like, alcohol kills people in car crashes, it can contribute to sort of addiction addiction and all sorts of bad things. Marijuana is not addictive and has killed no one.
And moreover, Tezlyn, I take your point that the polls are not what's driving you here. It's that Joe Biden made campaign promises and also is responsible for the crisis that we're dealing with now with respect to mass incarceration. But also 60% of Americans overall favor legalization or decriminalization of marijuana. That being the case, why do you think it is that Joe Biden is dragging his feet on this?
Well, again, because we're not holding them accountable. I appreciate the polls and I appreciate who's in favor and who's not in favor. And those are great to have think tank discussions. But let's talk about politics. Politics is about making a promise and being held for their promise, held accountable. Bottom line, if you say I want everybody to have red shirts and wear red shirts on Tuesday, I'm going to hold you accountable for that. So talking about the theory and why it's important, my mom was a big proponent of it. She passed away on the campaign trail with cancer. She was trying to figure out how, because at that particular time in Oklahoma, they did, it was not legal. And she was trying to figure out how to get medication from Colorado. So I could give you a million stories on how and what people favor and not favor. Let's talk about the fact that this man made this promise. It is literally on the website, lift every voice and sing until the heavens ring, literally on the website. So this is a matter of making people accountable for what they said they're going to do, whether it affects me personally or not. When we talk about student debt, it doesn't matter if it affects me personally or not. I have $100,000 in student debt. This is about, you made a promise. So, okay, he gave you $10,000 on student debt. If you said you're going to decriminalize marijuana, that's what you should do, regardless of what the polls say. You don't see people on the right catering to the polls. They could give a damn, excuse my language, about the polls. They push the line according to what they promised they said they were going to do for their constituents. And we have to do the same. And I want to be clear to the Black leaders, in particularly the Black leaders, because those are the leaders that I work with. I can't speak to everybody else. I've only lived in one community my entire life, and that's called the Black community. And Black leaders who continue to let this slide, but you got all the time in the day to come back and do Crime Bill 2.0, but say nothing about this. We see you, and it is time that we start getting more active and doing what I say, don't chase them, replace them, and let's start pushing the line, politics until something happens, and let's start replacing these people. We don't have time for polls. We need promises made and promises kept.
And especially because what we're asking Joe Biden to do is just is get it off the schedule, whatever it is on the controlled substances list. It is listed. It's scientifically inaccurate. It's listed among other, addictive, deadly, harmful drugs, and it is listed there as being just as dangerous as that. All we're saying is that's not true. It should not be a controlled substance to that degree. And then it's really just letting states and local municipalities experiment with whatever marijuana policies they want. Like, it's legal here. It's very legal here in Washington, D.C., but you have this ambiguity because technically the federal government still treats it in such a manner. It's a federalism issue, and in some sense, I mean, it's an issue, so many different issues.
But we don't want to make this a state's issue, just a complete state's issue, because that allows him to be off the hook, to be able to say, well, let's just give it to the states. No. Number one, he can direct federal law enforcement to refrain from prosecuting marijuana charges, issue a blank pardon to the thousands that have already been convicted that he helped lock up. So let's not, because when we do that, let's just give it to the states, because he's saying that now. He's already saying that. Let's give it to the states. No, it's not given to the states. It is what this man promised, flat out. So do whatever he can do on the federal level. And yeah, let states determine what they want to do. But we're talking about what Joe Biden's going to do on the federal level when he was running around going state to state, asking folks to galvanize behind him to win this election. So that's what this is about.
Speaking of locking people up for using marijuana, podcaster Joe Rogan blasted Kamala Harris yesterday for defending WNBA's Brittany Griner, who's being detained in Russia, obviously, for being found guilty of attempting to smuggle narcotics into the country, despite the vice president's prosecuting people for similar charges. Let's watch.
Hypocrisy about the Brittany Griner situation was so egregious in this country, where Kamala Harris is talking about how horrible it is that Brittany Griner's in jail. Well, you put people in jail.
Yeah.
You did. Thousands of people in jail for marijuana. Yeah, it's crazy.
Hello.
Yeah, and that was like the student loan debt forgiveness. That's great. But how come you guys didn't exonerate people that were in jail for marijuana when you said you were going to? They said that they were going to make marijuana federally legal. They said they were going to exonerate prisoners who are in jail for nonviolent drug offenses. That's what they said. None of that has happened.
And to be clear, Brittany Griner is in jail for smuggling having 0.02 ounces of cannabis oil on her. She says she didn't realize it was on her. 0.2 ounces of cannabis oil. Certainly, Kamala Harris, as California's top cop, has locked people up for less. Tezlyn, what do you make of the hypocrisy?
Well, I mean, I make of it that any prosecutor has to enforce the law that's given to them. So whether she agreed with that law or didn't agree with that law, I can't speak to why, she decided to enforce that. The numbers are the numbers. But it all plays into this entire system that we're talking about that started on the federal level, in particular with the 94 crime bill. So as far as if she had a choice to prosecute or not prosecute, why she didn't make that choice, the bottom line is, where are we right now? And right now it's called the Biden-Harris administration. And right now the Biden-Harris administration promised to decriminalize marijuana and promised to be able to go back and help those who have already been penalized. So what she did then, we're talking about the now. And so if they do nothing on the now and nobody holds them accountable on the now, then we are on the hook for not pushing that an issue and demanding that they do more.
Well, it seems to me that if you name a policy for Black people after the Black national anthem, Lift Every Voice and Sing, you should probably have some desire to follow through, or you have a lot of egg on your face and a huge responsibility for a large population that, to your point, Tezlyn, definitely did get you elected. Thank you so much for joining us today.
And can I say this, since you brought that up, they need to rename that policy. Stop naming things after Negro spirituals. Like Malcolm X said, it's time to stop swinging. It's time to stop singing. It's time to start swinging. So I was never a fan of that title in the first place. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here, Tezlyn. And we will have more Rising for you right after this.